816-578-1007 if you want to join us live. 800-348-1007. 35192 if you want to send a text. How about those Guardians, boy? They really held their own against the Dodgers. Dodgers are one of the two best teams in ball right now, and Guardians doing pretty well. First of three tonight in Minnesota against the Twins. That's a 7:40 first pitch here on MMS. So
if the Guardians win tonight, they are in first place in American League Central.
Well, they are ahead of my White Sox.
Yes, they are.
And
that's nice.
Yeah. So Twins and Guardians are kind of neck and neckish in the division. So 7:40 tonight here on WMMS and on the iHeartRadio app. You can listen to your Cleveland Guardians. Speaking of texts and talkback messages and all that stuff, I do appreciate all the messages I've been getting from people in the passing of my dad. Obviously, I'm not answering everyone, but I do very much appreciate those messages. By the way, even people who are traditionally dicks to me have been being nice.
That's good.
So if you as a listener or even a casual fan are wondering what it takes to make me a sympathetic figure, turns out, dead parent.
There was somebody that left a comment and was like, well, it's sad your dad died, but the level of humor has gone down on the show. So, and I was like, dude. And he goes, you know what? You're right. I should delete this.
It doesn't bother me because people don't care about my dad and they care about the show. No, I fully understand that. I get it. And I wasn't, by the way, I'm not going to make this the Dead Dad show, but I've been gone almost 3 weeks and there's a lot of things that I want to discuss. So
nobody can make it a Dead Dad show like Mary. So, you don't want to step on her toes.
Well, I'll tell you what though, poor Mary.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think about how we really did have, all told, we had the best case scenario with my dad. Mm-hmm. We had 14 years he wasn't supposed to have, and then a last week with him. Mary's dad died during COVID, and all these poor people who had a family member die from COVID, they couldn't go see them.
Right.
These people are dying alone. I mean, we all die alone, but I mean, I couldn't help but think of those people as these nurses are coming in and out of this critical care unit. We are spending, my mom wasn't outside for a week. She didn't leave the room. My mom didn't leave the critical care unit. She would go stretch her legs or something, and we'd bring her food. But my mom sat in my dad's room for a week.
That's one of the things that you don't think
about,
too.
And we were spending 12 hours a day, 8A to 8P. We were all on that floor, that critical care unit floor.
How long were your parents together? Over 50 years?
This August would have been their 53rd anniversary.
Right.
52 years and change, yeah.
Spending an entire lifetime together, and now your mom doesn't have that partner anymore. And that's the part, that's where I get choked up. I mean, it's sad that your dad passed away, but like you said, he had 14 years that
he wasn't supposed to
have. But her having to acclimate to this new world without him is very upsetting.
Yeah.
Because she's such a sweet lady.
She's very sweet, and my dad was the best. And 2.5 weeks ago, I very abruptly leave town because my siblings are texting me going, you got to get here because Dad's in the critical care unit. It doesn't look good. So I go, and that first weekend, he's kind of loopy, and they tell us what's going on. And so we're thinking, well, this might be it this weekend. And so what happens then is everybody starts coming to visit him. My ex-wife and my older kids and my brother's ex-wife and his older kids. My middle brother's still trying to get back from Tucson because he had just left to go see his son, my nephew. My sister's there with, so it probably had to freak my dad out. He was lucid the whole time. We really couldn't understand him because he didn't have his teeth in. That we didn't know were fake.
You know what that's payback for? Minger Things. All those years you making fun of that kid from Stranger
Things.
It's payback through your dad not being able to communicate with you in his last few days.
It got to over the course of the week because he lived for a week before we finally had a meeting with the palliative care nurse and said, look, the doctors will keep filling him full of platelets and blood for the next year, but they're not doing anything, right? He had a slow bleed in his spleen, and he already had low platelets. So my dad's covered in bruises, and we got pretty good at deciphering what he was saying because it was very hard to understand him with no teeth. And he would have kind of, he was always lucid, but he'd be kind of looped up. They were giving him stuff too. But he'd say he wasn't in any pain. but we're putting in 12-hour days in the critical care unit. You know, just for context, for people who are unfamiliar with this, because for the last 14 years, my family's been well-versed in platelet counts and transfusions and things like that. In the earlier days, or shortly after his initial diagnosis, he was constantly getting infused with blood and platelets. And I think we kind of got ourselves into a false sense of security because over the years, that got less and less and less, to where I would tell people, you'd never know my dad was sick. You'd never know. They stopped short of saying he was in remission, but you'd never know he was sick if you met him. He looked like a 77-year-old guy.
When I met him at your wedding,
yeah,
seemed like a very healthy man.
Yeah. So this happened all very, very quickly when he went into the critical care unit. But just for context, a normal platelet count for a healthy person is between like 200,000 and 400,000 per microliter of blood. That's a normal count. My dad had 6,000 platelets per.
So you're saying that's bad?
That's very, very bad, yes.
Okay.
So when they would, when you're speaking in the shorthand, they'd say, well, a healthy person, you say, well, your platelet count is 400, meaning 400,000. In my dad's parlance, when they would infuse him with platelets, they were just putting bags of platelets in, they'd go, well, it's up to 15, but that was just because of the infusion.
Right.
Hours later, it would go back down to
back
6.
Down. Yeah.
Because he had a slow bleed. And they were like, the surgeon comes in and goes, look, nobody wants to see me because I'm the last line of defense. We can do whatever you want to do. Because you have to still tell people what to do. He goes, we can do whatever you want to do. But your dad would not probably survive. He would bleed out from the actual surgery to repair his spleen, right? That whole thing.
Oh, God.
So then it became a week of him lying there and us having conversations with him. We got a week to talk to him.
And he was lucid and everything?
He was lucid. He'd be very, very tired. Very tired.
Wow. Losing that much blood, I feel like you would be like out of it.
Well, it was a drip.
Okay.
I mean, it was, they couldn't go in and repair it because they were like, he's got 6,000 platelets per microliter. There's nothing. And as soon as they would put him in, they wouldn't go anywhere. So he's covered in bruises. They're losing places to IV him.
Yeah.
It got to the point midweek where my mom and I had drawn on a sheet of paper like a grid with numbers and letters. So then my dad could point to him to try to tell us what was... Because apparently my parents turned out to be world-class procrastinators, which I didn't know either. So they didn't really plan for the end.
Wait,
so we're racing. My mom's trying to figure out, like, what's his computer password? And where are the bank account number? Things like this. Things that were perturbed me and the siblings because I'm like, this should have all been taken care of. But whatever. They were living their lives. They were going to Hawaii and they were doing whatever.
Well, because of what's happened with Mary's dad and even with your dad, like that's kicked my butt into gear where I have insurance policy. Like I've had one already, but I added another one and I'm getting all that stuff in order just so that, like, I'm not expecting to die anytime soon.
Nobody is.
But I want...
That's why you should do it.
I want to do it now so that everything is taken care of and it is just a seamless process and you guys can just... talk about the good times, not about all the procrastinating I did.
Just hand your kids a binder.
Yeah.
Here's all the info, right?
Exactly.
So we had a week with him. We had a week where but I'll tell you what, when your parent, in this case my dad, when your parent looks at you with tears in their eyes and tells you that they're scared, there's no way around that, right? No way around that. So when the first Friday came, the 10th, we had a meeting with
What'd you say back?
Huh? What did I say back?
Yeah, when he said you're scared.
I said you don't have any reason to be.
Oh.
What was I gonna say?
I would have hit him with you should be.
You should be. Yeah, well, when your dad's dying in a hospital bed, let's call your bluff.
Oh, no. Yeah. I have no problem saying that to him.
I had a friend text me.
Dad, you should be.
I had a friend text me and say, so Bill's the only one on the show with a dad. Ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, bro.
Well, you have a dad.
Yeah, but he's saying because he's not around.
Well, that's different than dead.
I know. I know that.
And again, that was the only reason that the single Instagram post that I made was just because I abruptly left. This would have all been unmentioned on social media, except that after a week, this audience gets very snippy.
Yes, they do.
And so it's a lot of
Twitter timeline.
Get back to work, that kind of thing. And I'm like, that's fair because they don't know because I didn't say anything. So I posted something that Friday. He ended up dying that afternoon. I posted it that morning saying, hey, blah, 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 this is what's going on, just so people would know what was going on. It's not like whatever. Just so there would be something. But we had a meeting with this nurse, and we said, look, because you have to tell the doctors, it's time to stop doing this, right? You can't just keep pumping him full of stuff. It's not doing anything. It's not improving his situation. And so they do what's called comfort care, where they give morphine and Ativan. But other than that, they don't do anything to kind of keep.
Oh yeah, sign me up for that.
Well, I think we also I don't think we realized how much heavy lifting the oxygen was doing, because once we removed him from that, it was probably a half an hour. But we were all there, and and then you move into, okay, now you've got a plan, it just all happened very, very quickly over the course of 2 weeks. But after 14 years, I consider that quick. So then I hit the bosses up here and I said, I'm going to be gone another week because now we have to bury my dad. Now we have to, and apparently funeral homes and things aren't open on weekends. So like you're just twiddling your thumbs over the weekend because nobody's around. And so we had to really do everything on, the rest of the week come Monday or whatever. And so it was just kind of a very, very strange experience. And I'm still kind of foggy in the brain, quite frankly.
Yeah, as you should be. That's
a lot
of stuff to do.
Yeah, we buried him on Friday, just in time for Father's Day. Yeah. But so that's why, and like I said, I know that there were some people who were aware what was going on. A lot of people weren't, but I left very abruptly.
There was some dill hole that was going back and forth on the, we still post a podcast, and it was on the page. And
every morning I had to do a best of and put that together, and every night I had to post the podcast. So that was a lot of fun too.
And there's a guy that's just saying, how come you don't talk about Biden, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, because we're not on the air, man. Like, what do you want us to do?
What I also like are the only people who want to talk about Biden are the people who hate him, right? Because the people who like him are like, yeah, well, we'll see what happens, Why are you going to judge a guy after a year and a half when you gave the last guy 4 years, by the way?
Right.
So shut up about Biden,
but also,
you putz.
We weren't live, and like this guy couldn't wrap his head around it. That I'm like, we are not on the air, and we're not going to be for a little while.
Well, those aren't regular listeners.
No, this is a guy that like he's not a regular person. He would have, if I would have kept going, he would have gone all night.
Oh, he was just bored.
He's just one of those people that can't stop. They have to reply.
I see.
They have to reply.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're also, I'm going to take a quick break here into this. We got $1,000 for you to go, listen for this, go fuel yourself. Oh. Have you seen gas prices? Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I put $10 in and my meter didn't move. I'm like, no. Everyone's going to get it.
Mr. $10. The lines at Costco. Because usually you go to Costco, they're like, oh, they got a good deal on gas. There's not much anybody can do now, so it's like you save a nickel or something, but the lines are still, people are willing to save a nickel.
I just was like, get out!
Yeah.
Get out!
Like, $75 to fill my tank, boy. Okay, listen, go fuel yourself. It's $1,000. Use it for whatever. Everything's expensive, right? So listen closely and good luck.
The Buzzard wants you to go fuel yourself and score $1,000. Enter the nationwide keyword money at WMMS.com. That's money. Enter it now at WMMS.com. And good luck from Buzzard Radio.
I'll say the wild thing, too, over the course of last week with the preparations for the funeral and then the wake and the funeral itself were all of, like, my old teachers that I hadn't seen in 100. And
still alive?
Well, because we're all standing there receiving people at the visitation. My dad's in the casket, obviously. And you never, by the way, listen, I was talking to Gwen, because Gwen and Nora were back here up until the very last days, because I go, look, there's no reason for you to come. She was like, we should come. I go, no, I'm crashing at my brother's house. I'm sleeping in my nephew's bed. I'm like, I'm spending 12 hours a day at the hospital. There's nothing for you to do here. So don't worry about it, right? So, but you never get used to how your loved one doesn't look like themselves in the casket. Because when you knew them, they were alive. And even if they weren't doing well, they might have still had, they got blood going through them.
Yes, it's a very different look.
It's very different.
When my grandpa passed away a few years ago, he was so sallow and just, he was a bigger guy, but he lost a lot of weight towards the end of his life. but it just it didn't look
Because
right.
in your brain, you
Yeah.
go, well, it'll just look like them asleep. You know, because Gwen said, she goes, God, I never even went to, because we were having the conversation about whether, we asked Nora if she wanted to see Grandpa in the casket. She initially said no. And I said, that's totally fine. If you change your mind, I'll walk you in and we can go look. And she very tentatively kind of finally did it. And we said a little prayer or whatever. But you never get used to seeing how somebody doesn't look like the way you're going to see. And Gwen said, she goes, I don't think I went to a funeral until I was in my 20s. My grandparents. I said, I grew up going to funerals. Everybody in my family died at like 42 years old. So I, as a little kid, all I did as a kid was go to funerals. And you're still never prepared for when you look at that person and you go, oh my God.
Especially when someone that dies young.
Yeah.
Like my cousin died when he was 17, and that was one of those things where they had an open casket, and you know, it's just so strange because it just doesn't, like you said, it doesn't look like them because you've never seen them in this state before, and it doesn't just look like they're sleeping; they look like a corpse, and it's upsetting.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but teachers of mine that were still alive and, like, you know, a handful of people that, like, I graduated with and, you know, it was weird because they'd go, you don't remember me, do you? And there were a couple of teachers of mine that I remembered, and then they would stand there. These teachers, I guess they were trying to maybe inject a little levity into the situation or what, which is fine, right? We weren't standing there weeping, but it's a solemn occasion, whatever. These teachers of mine that would come up would stand there and tell these anecdotes about what an awful kid I was in class.
Well, those are the memories that they have.
Those are
that's what they want to share.
And they still have.
That's amazing.
You know how many kids these teachers have had, and they remember little AC for being a pain in the ass.
I think that's great. I think that's very sweet.
Because they always go, you know, it was funny. I didn't want to laugh, but I had to do my job. I go, you didn't want to laugh. This is Catholic school. You couldn't wait to whip my ass. It's corporal punishment. What are you talking about? Catholic school in the 70s and 80s.
Now
You were going to laugh.
Here's the question that I know.
You ain't laughing now.
Poundcake's dying to ask.
What is the question?
What's your payout?
Oh, yeah. What's your inheritance?
There is none. He didn't have life insurance.
No!
That's why everybody's scrambling right now. No, because apparently he let it lapse, and then he got sick, and he goes, well, nobody's going to insure me now. So, yeah, it's all out of pocket.
Did you have anything to, because you always talk about how when one of your parents pass away or both, you're going to have to go through the house and rummage through things to find things. Did you have time to do that while you were there?
No. All I did, because my mom wanted to be in the house by herself. She didn't want anybody at the house.
Oh, why?
So I'm crashing. That's what she wanted to do. She wanted to be in there by herself. She didn't want to be surrounded by people, which
wanted to
I
be alone,
fully
which
understand.
is-
Want to be
that's
alone.
understandable.
I mean, that house, you know, my dad, again, he's been sick for 14 years. My mom is credited in large part with keeping him alive that long. Nutrition and supplements and blah, blah, blah.
Now, do you think it's because she wanted to be alone, or it's because, I mean, for 53 years they were together, and now she's having herself a little risky business, sliding around in a shirt, singing old-time rock and roll moment?
No. There's a lot of carpet in that house. It's not enough hardwood floors to do any sliding in socks. No, I don't think it's that. All I did was finally remove my comic book collection from the basement, which I've been meaning to do for 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
Never got around to it, so those are finally where I live now.
We'll have to go through those and see if we got anything good.
I do. I'm going through them. Yeah, I got some good ones.
Get them rated and stuff.
Yeah, but no, there's no. My parents were not wealthy people, so there's no big payout.
But I did.
But I'll tell you what,
I
planning
did
for a
think
funeral.
Poundcake was like curious about that.
Well, there's your answer.
I didn't want to
Planning
ask.
for planning for a funeral, by the way, is the biggest case to be made for cremation. Mm-hmm. Because funerals, I mean, irrespective of inflation, funerals are expensive. And these funeral homes go, well, we service 700 families a year. And I'm like, you guys are printing money over here. Because my family's Catholic, so there was going to be no cremation. It's burial. So my mom had to, like, in 1 week, we had to get the casket. She had to buy the plots,
Man.
right? So
plots because she had to wanted to get one next to him, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it was a wild scene, man. So I'm like, that's why we're all, me and the siblings, we're like all going to be cremated. We're all going to be turned into trees or something.
Well, is the tree thing expensive too? That's got to be expensive.
It ain't $15,000.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, And the girl that was helping us at the funeral home was like, I'm going to be cremated too, but first I'm going to be buried in that cheap coffin. I go, why would you be buried in a coffin and then burned up?
Yeah, what's
I don't
the point of
understand that
that
at all. There's like a cheapo cloth coffin you can get like $900.
She's like, well, I get a discount because I work here, so I might as well go through the burial. And then,
so your ashes are going to be parts of you and the coffin? Like, what's the point of that? I don't know. I guess everyone who's cremated, their ashes are them and parts of the last person who had been cremated.
Yeah.
It's not like they're going in there cleaning it like a grill every time. You know?
They might.
little bonus grandpa.
So anyway, it was a very arduous and a stressful 2 weeks. I got more than my share. Boy, I had more. I was more Jesus adjacent over the past 2 weeks than I've been in my entire adult life because of all the meetings with priests and masses and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, so they still come to like the hospice and say a prayer by your bed and stuff?
Oh yeah, they came twice. We had 2 different priests come and give them last rites.
Okay, so I'm not Catholic, so what is a last rite?
Well, when you're going to die, it's like take the Lord take you and bless you or whatever. And here is I got a break, but I'm going to tell you the big scam here when I get back because I heard him do this and I go, wait a second.
You're damning him to hell.
Not that. It runs counter to everything I was taught growing up as a
I'm
Catholic.
excited for this.
Yeah.
That's a good tease.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a break. 35192 and a text for anything. AlanCoxShow.com for all the other stuff, and you can listen anywhere on the iHeartRadio app.